Good afternoon. In the 2 weeks since President Trump nominated Judge Kavanaugh, he has met with 23 senators. Unfortunately, all of them are Republicans. That's because Senator Schumer is encouraging his members to not even meet with the judge. For members of the opposing party to demand answers to questions and yet refuse to even meet with a qualified Supreme Court nominee is unprecedented. Senator Schumer should stop these political games and meet with Judge Kavanaugh. We welcome Senate Democrats who take their constitutional duty of advise and consent seriously. Judge Kavanaugh stands ready to meet with members of both parties. As you know, here in a few minutes, the President will be participating in an event, and we're excited to hold the 2018 Made in America Product Showcase here at the White House. The President is committed to policies that ensure more products are made in America. Today we will see items like snowboards made by Never Summer Industries in Colorado, campers made by the Newmore Corporation in Indiana, an F-150 truck made by the Ford Motor Company in Michigan, and baseball bats made by BWP Bats in Pennsylvania. And a personal favorite, Ranger boats from Flippin, Arkansas is also here. The President celebrates every state's effort and commitment to American-made products, and he is honored to have these companies here today. And we look forward to having you all join us at that event here shortly. And with that, we'll hurry and jump into questions. Kevin.
Sarah, thanks. Is the President considering the Republican House intel request to declassify key sections of the records with respect to that FISA document release? And will he do that declassification before the House goes into recess at the end?
The President has purposefully remained uninvolved in this process. He said repeatedly that he wants the Department of Justice to be fully transparent with these requests from Congress, and he's going to continue at this point to remain uninvolved. However, he sees more and more every single day that this is proving further and further to be a total witch hunt, particularly because it was based on a false and unverified and discredited dossier. Steve?
Yeah, sir, we saw the President's tweet on Iran last night. What prompted him to use such strong language on them?
The President's been, I think, pretty strong since day one in his language towards Iran. He was responding to comments made from them, and he's going to continue to focus on the safety and security of American people.
What would it take to have direct negotiations between the President and President Rouhani?
I'm not going to get into specifics and certainly not negotiate with the press. That would be a determination that the President would make on what that looks like. But the ultimate goal and the focus of the President is making sure that we keep nuclear weapons out of their hands and that we focus on the protection of Americans. Bill?
Sarah, the President tweeted yesterday that Russia's election interference was all a big hoax. Those are the words he used. But last week he said he had full faith in the U.S. intelligence agencies. So does he believe the interference was a big hoax, or does he have faith in the intelligence agencies that have concluded definitively the other way, that Russia did, in fact?
As the President has said many times and stated over and over again, as have I and a number of other administration officials, we maintain that Russia interfered in the elections. The President, however, very much so, and has repeatedly, as again have the rest of us, that his campaign colluding in that process is a total hoax, and we still hold strong to that.
The tweet suggested overall that it was a hoax, though.
The President is referencing the collusion component. Once again, the President has faith in the intelligence that suggests and maintain that Russia was involved in the elections. However, it's also important that same information concludes that it had no impact on the election, and that the President, again, would like to repeat that there was no collusion. Jonathan?
Thank you, Sarah. Sort of following up on that question, the President has very forcefully spoken out against Iran. He's very forcefully spoken out against North Korea. He has said that he will forcefully speak out against any threat to the United States. Russian election interference is a threat to our democracy. Why will he not forcefully denounce that?
The President has been incredibly tough on Russia. He's brought it up directly to him in person every single time that they have met. He has put unprecedented sanctions and been extremely tough on Russia across a number of fronts, which we've addressed here many times before. Frankly, I'm not sure why that is so hard for the media to write about. We've repeated it time and time again. The policy that the President has been since day one in office has been extremely tough on Russia, probably more so than with any other country. John?
Thank you, Sarah. Senator Rand Paul today made a strong attempt to vitiate the credibility of former CIA Director John Brennan, saying that he's, and I quote, monetizing his security clearance and that it should be removed from him. He even called on the president to do this. Will the president consider Senator Paul's suggestion and call for the removal of former Director Brennan's security clearance?
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe. The president is exploring the mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and security clearances. Making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president is extremely inappropriate, and the fact that people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence.
Follow-up question to Steve first. When the president pulled out of the JCPOA, he did not reveal an alternate plan to address Iran's nuclear ambitions. He seemed to bank on economic sanctions being enough to get them back to the table. Is that still his plan B?
Look, as we have said, the president's #1 goal is to make sure Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon. We have similar and shared interests with our European allies. We're continuing to have discussions with them, and when we have specifics on that front, we'll let you know.
About Russia, Sarah, my question was a follow-up, but my question about Russia is that, President Trump continues to air his grievances about the coverage of his meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Because you guys continue to obsessively cover it.
But we can't really, because it's been 7 days. We have not received a readout. We have not received any specific details about agreements that were reached, whether formally or verbally. So when can we expect that? And by the way,
the only
did he take
specific
notes?
agreement that was made was that the two national security teams from both the United States and Russia would continue at a working level these discussions. I can tell you that Ambassador Bolton plans to have a meeting, a follow-up with his counterpart from Russia next month, in addition to meetings with other European allies to further those discussions, and we'll keep you posted when we have specific details on what that meeting looks like.
Sarah, so does President Trump plan on ordering to move any carriers or additional military resources to the region should Iran continue to pose the threat that he alluded to in his tweet? And I also have a follow-up.
I don't have any specific announcements on that at this
Just
point.
a follow-up then. Secretary of State Pompeo yesterday talked a lot about corruption and human rights abuses in Iran. Why is he zeroing in, and why is the administration zeroing in on Iran when a number of other states are guilty of the same transgressions, including Russia, which we are now warming up to?
Again, we've had tough conversations with Russia. We've been tough on them with our policy. As I stated this morning, we can be tough on more than one country at a time, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Thanks, Sarah. Could you explain a little bit of the threshold that the president has for taking away former official security clearance? Is it his position then that any former Obama administration official who holds clearance and just make political statements about him should have their clearance revoked, or is it just limited to the names right now that you read?
As of right now, we are exploring the mechanism on those specific names. I'll keep you posted when there's further details. John?
Thanks a lot, Sarah. The language the president used in the tweet that he sent out last night was very similar to the language he used last August in New Jersey when he spoke of fire and fury being rained down on North Korea. And of course that led to a one-on-one meeting the president ultimately had with Kim Jong-un. Is the president open to diplomacy with Iran, meeting perhaps one-on-one with President Rouhani?
I'm not going to negotiate what the specifics that the president or the administration will be looking at. Again, our goal is to stop Iran from nuclear weapons, and we'll keep you posted as we move through that process.
Ask about your statement regarding Judge Kavanaugh that you made at the very top. There's one Republican senator who says he's undecided. Well, there's a few that say there's undecided, but Rand Paul in particular says I'm honestly undecided. I'm very concerned about his position on privacy and the Fourth Amendment. Are you concerned about losing Rand Paul once this vote for Judge Kavanaugh ultimately gets to the floor?
We're certainly hopeful that Senator Paul will do the right thing and vote for this very highly qualified nominee. Steve?
Yes, Sarah, flipping around John's question about Iran, considering the comments that we've heard in the past day from the president's tweet, Ambassador Bolton's statement, which you put out in Secretary Pompeo's speech last night. What is stopping this administration from just openly advocating regime change in Iran?
Again, our focus is on stopping Iran from having nuclear weapons, regardless of who is there. That's what our priority is, and if we have any further announcements on that front, I'll let you know. But the president and his administration are going to continue pushing and advocating for that.
Sarah, regarding one of the stories that broke on Friday, how did the president feel when he found out that his longtime lawyer and fixer had recorded him surreptitiously?
While the president maintains that he's done nothing wrong on this specific topic, I'd refer you to the president's outside counsel.
And still deny that he ever had a relationship with a woman named Karen McDougal.
Once again, the president maintains that he's done nothing wrong, and I would refer you to Rudy Giuliani for all questions on that matter.
Sarah? I just wanted to follow up first on this statement you made about Brennan and his security clearance. Are you considering any additional actions against Brennan and the other names you read off? In addition to revoking their security clearance, is there any other action under review?
Not that I'm aware of.
And then, to go back real quick to the Russia investigation, so the FISA application on Carter Page states that he is a Russian agent involved in clandestine activities. Given that the president continues to say there was no collusion between his campaign and Russia, is he concerned, or does he not believe the intelligence community's assessment that Carter Page was a Russian agent?
Again, I think that we've spoken extensively what our position is on this, and we have no changes to that.
So the president is threatening to punish Brennan and Comey and Clapper for saying things about him that he doesn't like. Is that presidential?
The president is exploring these mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases actually monetized their public service and their security clearances, and making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president is extremely inappropriate. The president contends that the fact that people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence.
So
when we have further updates on that front, I'll certainly let
free
you know.
speech he doesn't like, and he wants to punish them for it.
No, I think you are creating your own story there. The president doesn't like the fact that people are politicizing agencies and departments that are specifically meant to not be political and not meant to be monetized off of security clearances.
A separate question, actually, but to follow up on that, isn't the president doing exactly what you just said the president doesn't want all these people doing? Politicizing matters of national security by going after his political enemies?
No, the president's not making baseless accusations of improper contact with a foreign government and accusing the president of the United States of treasonous activity when you have the highest level of security clearance, when you're the person that holds the nation's deepest, most sacred secrets at your hands, and you go out and you make false accusations against the president of the United States. He thinks that is something to be very concerned with, and we're exploring what those options are and what that looks like.
The topic, Sarah, was actually on the message to...
Sorry, I got to keep moving just because we're running out of time. Caitlin, go ahead.
Message to Paul
Sorry,
Manafort.
Hallie,
Does
I
he
got
have
about
one?
2 more questions left. Caitlin, go ahead.
The president's message to Paul Manafort, Sarah, does he have one?
Not that I'm aware of. Caitlin, go ahead.
When is the president going to make this decision on those security clearances?
I said when we have an update, we will let you know.
Okay, so my question, that was just a follow-up on that. My question, has the president, since you didn't answer if he's briefed, since they haven't briefed reporters on what went down during the 2-hour meeting
We've actually had
President
a press
Trump?
conference. The president's done a number of interviews. We've actually put out quite a bit of information following that meeting.
My question is not about the press, but has the president briefed his national security advisor, his Secretary of State, the Director of National Intelligence, and the Defense Secretary on what exactly was said between him and President Putin?
The president has met and spoken with all of those individuals since his meeting with President Putin.
And when he briefs them, is he relying solely on his own memory to tell them what happened during that 2-hour meeting?
The president has met and consulted with all of his national security team, and we feel very confident in those.
It's on what he remembers that happened. It's not.
Caitlin, I'm not going to go
took
into
or-
the specific details on how the president interacts every single time with his national security team.
Well, this is a rarity,
But
though. It's a sit down with the Russian president.
it's actually
for 2
not a
hours
rarity. It's
one-on-one.
a normal practice for two world leaders to be able to have a conversation with one another.
President of Russia
David,
was
go
having
ahead.
an American
What about
election.
What about President Obama and Vice President Biden? And their security clearances, are they on the list as well?
I'm not aware of any plans for that at this point. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you on the South Lawn.
Everybody, welcome to the briefing room here at ABC News headquarters in Washington. I'm Devin Dwyer with our senior justice correspondent Pierre Thomas, correspondent Serena Marshall here with us. What a briefing. A little bit of news there off the top on this Monday with the White House making an extraordinary assertion of executive power, threatening to, in Sarah Sanders' words, explore the mechanisms to remove security clearances from a number of high-level national security and intelligence officials in the Obama administration. A lot to unpack, guys. Pierre, your instant reaction to this. This is quite different. Usually, administrations, when they transition, like to keep that sort of brain trust of intel officials who keep their clearance so they can participate in the process and support their successors. Here, Sarah Sanders is saying, we don't like what we've been hearing out of these guys. Let's take it away.
Well, I was racking my brain as she was saying that to come up with any similar scenario. I can find none. Essentially, he's saying that he's looking at removing the security clearance of the former CIA director, the former National Director of Intelligence, the former FBI director, and again, the primary reason is that she said that they are politicizing and monetizing their positions. Again, we don't really have a precedent for a wholesale removal of all these clearances like we're seeing. And the obvious question that our Terry Moran just asked, is this being done simply because he doesn't like what they've been saying? Right. And these are controversial figures in this current politicized environment. John Brennan, James Comey, former FBI director, of course, Jim Clapper, former DNI. Susan Rice, they've all sort of gone after President Trump. The president, though, this weekend in a firestorm, he tweeted just a dozen tweets today, including, again, calling this Russia story a hoax. Serena, he is sort of opening a new front in this pushback campaign, if you will, and sort of now trying to shine the spotlight on these guys and their claims against him.
I mean, to echo Pierre, it's just remarkable to hear him say that it's politicizing and monetizing, and it's because they're making these baseless accusations about the Russia investigation. But remember, the president, in those tweets over the weekend, Devin, made a couple baseless accusations about the Russia probe. He said that they raided his lawyer's office without cause, that they essentially were robbing the lawyer, that he made a comment about those FISA warrants being executed, and all of that was not based in accuracy either. So it seems we have this whole new era in Washington of what qualifies and what they're allowed to do based on the president's wishes.
Let's see if we have our Terry Moran with us. He was in the briefing room. He's not out there yet. We await Terry Moran shortly. Pierre, I want to go to you on the other news from the briefing. This little bit of pushback from Sarah Sanders on the developments over the weekend on Carter Page. The government taking the extraordinary step, unprecedented step of releasing this FISA application that they used to get surveillance on Page during the campaign. The president says, this vindicates me. They spied on my team.
Well, again, there are a lot of people looking at that document and saying the exact opposite, that the case is laid out that the FBI had information from multiple places, just not the Steele dossier, which made them believe that Carter Page, in their estimation, was an agent of a foreign government, in this case, Russia. And they said that given his position in terms of communicating back and forth with the Trump campaign and by his own admission saying that he was, quote, an advisor to the Kremlin, that they felt that warranted additional investigation. So, again, you have what's coming from the president being completely at odds with what some of the law enforcement and intelligence officials have been saying, that they got the warrant approved by 4 different Republican-appointed judges and that it was done appropriately.
And what's your bottom line, Pierre? People trying to make sense of this story. We've seen the Nunes memo. We've seen the FISA application. So many acronyms and, Carter Page, who is this guy? Sort of a peripheral figure. But at the end of the day, now that this has been released, what's your bottom line? Was anything inappropriate done? Is the president correct that this is a smoking gun?
The way I would segment it is this. We don't yet know whether Bob Mueller is going to be able to prove whether members of the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. What we do know is that the Russians attacked and hacked the DNC and the Hillary Rodham Clinton campaign. That much we do know. And we also know that there were an inordinate amount of Trump officials who had communications with Russians. The Don Jr. Trump Tower meeting with Russians, that's fact. It happened. And the reason was to get, quote, dirt on Hillary Clinton from what they thought was a Putin government. So those are facts. We don't know the results yet of the investigation. So I think we need to sort of take a step back. When the FBI director comes out and says the Trump-appointed FBI director said this is not a witch hunt. Why does he say that? Because you can look at the facts that they're pursuing. Many different meetings. We can document over 10 different people associated with Trump who met with Russians or had communications with Russians. Those are facts. What Mueller has to resolve is, did anything inappropriate or illegal happen? That we don't know the answer to.
And let's put that to Terry Moran, who's now with us from the White House. Terry, you stirred up a little bit of news there with your exchange on Sarah Sanders on all this. Pierre's talking about the facts. The facts are that these contacts did occur with Russians. Sarah Sanders saying all these former intel officials who have been talking about this are simply politicizing this and threatening, in I think your expression there was retaliation. That's what it certainly seems like.
It does, Devin, and it also seems, however, that this whole episode, and to an extent the whole presidency, brings out the worst in some people on both sides. It is an extraordinary thing, and in many ways a disturbing thing, to see the former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, the former head of the Director of National Intelligence, the former head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, take such partisan positions in the debate about the president that follows their service. That is something that we have not seen before in the history of the United States. You didn't see Richard Helms, who was head of the CIA, do it. You didn't see Judge Webster, you didn't see, who was head of the FBI, do that kind of thing. It's new, and it is disturbing. Now, it's especially disturbing to this president, who takes his own unprecedented step of threatening to punish former officials for the kinds of speech that they make, whether you like it or don't. They are entitled to their First Amendment rights as are other people, and they could be punished by having their security clearances revoked. We should point out, President Obama did not revoke General Mike Flynn's security clearance when he stood up at the Republican National Convention and just ripped President Obama and Hillary Clinton. He didn't threaten to revoke Mike Flynn's security clearance. So this is a departure on both sides, and they seem to have brought out the worst in each other.
And it's also sort of unclear whether the mechanics are there for the president to do that. I think that's something we're going to have to unpack very shortly.
And Devin, I feel like we should point out, too, these guys aren't in office right now. So revoking their security clearance might make it harder for those in office to be able to get background information, as Pierre had pointed out earlier. But they're not currently getting immediate updates from anybody in the offices that provide them new details on what's happened over the last
year. It's interesting.
Year
Having talked to some people that know the aforementioned former senior officials, they'll say things on the one hand that, look, they shouldn't be talking as much as they've been talking after having left office. Give the new administration, in the way that Obama has given the president, time to get his sea legs and not comment. On the other hand, their supporters would say they're speaking out about what they believe was highly unusual activity and highly unusual comments by the president. There are a lot of people in the intelligence community last week that saw the president's performance with Vladimir Putin and just did not understand it. And so you have, again, the juxtaposition of those two very contrasting points of view in terms of, is it patriotic for them to say these things, or are they stepping into an area where it's inappropriate for them to be commenting in the way that they have been?
And on the question of monetizing their positions, Comey's book had to be approved by the agencies that he wrote about. So they had to go through the proper formal steps before publishing, as any previous administration official.
And meanwhile, as this conversation unfolds, the president sort of stirring things up this morning, Terry, on a whole number of topics: Amazon, the Washington Post, North Korea. But it was that all-caps tweet on Iran that really sort of startled people this morning as they were waking up. There it is, the president threatening suffering like they've never seen before in response to this threat. What's your take on this, Terry? Is this why is this happening now? A distraction, perhaps, from the
Well,
Russia fiasco?
Look, he was responding directly to a threat by a foreign leader, by President Hassan Rouhani of Iran, who said, partly for his own domestic purposes, and he may have been baiting Donald Trump because he needs Donald Trump to make him look good in front of his own people, who he's having trouble with. But he said, if the United States continues on this path, they're going to get the mother of all wars. Which is echoing Saddam Hussein. It didn't end too well for Saddam Hussein, so you might not want to use that kind of language, but he did. Donald Trump is not going to walk away from that taunt. If we know one thing about Donald Trump, if you taunt him like that, he's not going to walk away from that, and he didn't. He can do, as he demonstrated with North Korea, crazy, threatening world global rhetoric better than anybody. He can do it better than the North Koreans. He can do it better than the Iranians. And so is it a distraction? It may have worked that way, but I think he was going to answer Rouhani.
But Terry, it should be. This is how the Iranians speak. In the past, they've called America the devil. They said they trust themselves to the devil in 2012 at a UN event in New York. So is this really going off script for the Iranians from what we've expected from them for the past decade?
Well, that's a good question, but I think for Rouhani, you're seeing something new. See, he was the big loser, really. He and a lot of the Iranian people, but certainly politically, Rouhani was the big loser when President Trump destroyed the Iran nuclear deal. Rouhani had staked his career on that deal. He had hoped that by getting close to President Obama and carving out this deal, that he would improve the lives of his people materially and be a hero. Well, first, even before President Trump deep-sixed that agreement, the Iranian people were not seeing economic benefits. So he was already getting unpopular. And now he just looks like a joke. The hardliners have been strengthened. He's trying to get back in the game. He's trying to say, look, I'm a hardliner too. I can talk like that too. That is not his typical language. And the fact that he's president, I just think it was too much for Donald Trump to resist.
Too much to resist. There's also this question of the fallout from the summit last week continuing. Pierre, I want to put to you a little bit of news out of the briefing there. Sarah Sanders said that the president had, in fact, met with all of his senior leadership team to brief them essentially on what he talked about in that 2-hour meeting, which we are still waiting details on. Did that surprise you a little bit? She said that there essentially were no agreements, substantive agreements, which sort of breaks with what the Russians have said.
Well, to be fair here, we still don't know what the substance of the conversations were. We've heard a lot from the Russians. They've been putting out, statements about various positions and priorities that were agreed to, but we have not heard from our own government any specific, detailed accounting of what those two men talked about.
And yet, a new ABC News poll out just this morning found that most Americans disapproved of the president's handling of the meeting with Vladimir Putin, though a surprising number, majority, didn't think that he went too far in standing with Putin. Terry Moran, you certainly have your pulse on things here and have been studying the numbers. Republicans, some surprising numbers among Republicans in this poll. Very, very high marks for the president despite all the controversy.
Well, yes, I can. I'm sorry, I was distracted for a moment. But I think what you're seeing is that President Trump can succeed very quickly in getting any problem for him onto the turf on which he's most comfortable, which is a call to the barricades, to his side of what has become a culture war in America, to fight the other side. All the critics, that pile on him, including he believes, and so do his supporters, the media. Once he turns it into an us versus them, they're going to be with him. Because right now we're in a moment in American politics, it seems to me, where it's less about what you believe in than who you hate. It's a sad thing, but that is essentially hatred, it seems, or at least anger is the driving force in American politics today, and Donald Trump has a genius for stoking it.
Perhaps a genius. In any event, though, those partisan lines are drawn. Terry, you're exactly right. Everyone's in their corner on this one with Russia. Thank you so much, Terry Moran at the White House with a great briefing today. A lot of news out of that briefing. You guys, we got a lot to unpack the rest of the week. I know, Pierre, you're tracking the Paul Manafort case, which is still hot. The judge to rule this afternoon on whether the trial will be delayed.
Yeah, we're expecting a ruling coming up very shortly in terms of whether the trial will be delayed. Jury selection was expected to start this coming Wednesday. So we're all waiting with bated breath to see if the judge says it will be delayed 1, 2, 3 weeks or longer.
All right, this would be the first case to go to trial in the Mueller investigation, so very significant. We hope you stay with us here at ABC News, ABC News Live, abcnews.com. Download the ABC News app for updates on this and all the stories we're following this week. A big week ahead here in Washington. I'm Devin Dwyer, Pierre Thomas, Serena Marshall. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.